to have you here, my friend.
Good to be here.
You may have missed it, but I asked if they could raise their hand if they knew what Greenfly does, and nobody raised their hand, and I didn't know either.
It's a little upsetting because one of our employees is in that project.
I might have missed his hand. Look at him. I think he just got embarrassed there. But as I said, 30 seconds with Claude, and my mind was absolutely blown because what Greenfly does, well, who their clients include, the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, more than 40 leagues, more than 500 teams around the globe, including the Champions League, the Premier League. It's insane that everyone doesn't know what you do. So tell them, what does Greenfly do?
Well, I think I can say with confidence that I think probably every single person in this room saw something that we did today. So there isn't a game for a major sport in the United States that does not have people on the ground, staffed at the game, capturing content on the Greenfly platform. We work with all the major U.S. leagues. We do all the in-venue content capture, tagging the organization, distribution, and a key part of that distribution is to the athletes themselves. We have tens of thousands of the world's most valuable athletes on our platform. That's how they get access to their content. So if you're an NBA player, you step off the court after, one of the games tonight, you open up the Greenfly app and you have waiting for you, photos and videos of the game you just played.
Delivered right to you.
Delivered, automated, individually curated at scale. And and we do that across the major leagues.
Primarily and exclusively short-form vertical video.
I would say a lot of short-form vertical video, not exclusively, a lot of photos as well. It depends on the league and a lot of the focus, but photos, videos, all kinds, but vertical video is certainly a major point of emphasis.
Needless to say, a lot more questions about content ahead, but I have to ask about your personal journey from Harvard Law, DOJ, FCC, counsel for Activision Blizzard, and now the co-founder of a sports tech company along with a former Major League Baseball all-star. If you could explain the trajectory and what was the problem that you were initially looking to solve here?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It was all one problem through all of that. I will say a lot of irrelevant experiences is what you're highlighting, but I enjoyed every step of the way. I think where we started, so as you mentioned, co-founder is Sean Green, which is also where the name comes from. It's a pun. It's also a slang term in baseball. He was a Major League Baseball player for about 16 years. We're also first cousins and we grew up together. Ohtani just broke another one of his records, right? Most consecutive games on base by a Dodger. He already broke his most home runs in a season by a Dodger
probably
record.
Beats them all. So
yeah, I think it's he still has the most total bases record. But anyways, but yeah, I mean, we really started out really thinking about content and interactions. Really thinking about how do people get content from relevant people. So one of the original ideas, Sean hit 4 home runs in a game. I think there's only been 17 or 18 people that did it. Somebody did that. There was like a Fox game of the week. There's an effort to, hey, how can we get a video saying, welcome to the 4 homer club from Sean? There's all this kind of back and forth. He's like, wait a minute, I got a phone in my pocket. I can make that video. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for him, which is like, it'd be great to set up a system where you get the right piece of content from the right person at the right time. So that's where we started. And then once we started onboarding all these athletes and creating these networks to source content, we realized you could also send content the other way. And then we saw a lot of needs around how do you organize the content that's being captured in venue and connect that to the people that can use the content. So over time, we just layered in more and more functionality over the last dozen years.
Short form content, I think, was a gift from Gen Z, correct? I mean, as our attention spans have disappeared faster than my cash out there at the casino, do you have a handle on how long is the ideal length today for short form vertical videos? Is it 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds? Everybody wants to know that today.
It's a good question. And we actually should have data on that I should have at my fingertips, which I don't, because we can actually track what kind of content is being used, how it's performing, and actually that would be a very good question to go back and answer. I mean, what's interesting is that we're in a world where, people watch, 4-hour conversations on YouTube and they watch, 12-second videos on TikTok, and it's really all over the map. I think when it comes to kind of short form content that folks on our platform, around the 30-second mark is pretty typical.
I was watching a 2-minute video with my kid and he couldn't make it. He couldn't make it to the end. It was It was scary. Do you remember Vine? It's almost like we're headed back there and they were ahead of their time.
I mean, Vine was ahead of its time. It's one of those things. It was TikTok before there was TikTok, right?
Indeed. All right. Like too many companies, as I explained in the intro, just don't understand the value of content. And I'm fighting this fight every day, but now leagues have come along. How do you quantify it? How would you explain to someone skeptical that content is a revenue driver, not an extraneous cost?
It's a very good question. I mean, I think one of the questions to ask, and it's a lot easier to make this point now than it was when we were starting out, is, if you're a rights holder, like what are your fans consuming? Yeah. And I think all rights holders appreciate right now that their fans are consuming a ton of short form content on social media and other platforms. And I think you got to ask yourself too, when they're doing that, like if that's such a sort of essential part of the fan experience, people follow teams, they follow leagues. You're an NBA fan in Europe. You're not watching games at 3 a.m. You're waking up in the morning, you're consuming a ton of short form content. And so one of the questions for all these organizations is, if that's an enormous part of the fan experience, is it really appropriate to just view that as kind of a, quote, advertisement for the real thing, when for a lot of people, it is the primary mode of interaction? And so if that's how people are consuming content, and I think sports organizations have understood for a long time that where there's content and content consumption, there's value and there's money, then you really need a strategy to really unlock that from a revenue perspective.
Was there something that changed the minds of the leagues? Because they were skeptical for quite some time, and some still frankly are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's still a lot of concern and focus as to how to really build meaningful value around social form content from a revenue perspective. I think they all understand that that's what a lot of their fans are consuming, and that's what a lot of the focus is, and that's, there's enormous volume there. And so, I don't think it's important, or I don't think it's sort of necessary to convince people that this is what fans want. I think the question that becomes, okay, but we know how to sell a media rights package, we know how to sell merch, we know how to sell tickets. Like, how do we build meaningful revenue around this category? And you see a lot of these kind of very specific, kind of one-off, sponsorship activations and like kind of clever ideas. But I think now there's a real appreciation, like, no, we have to build meaningful, sustainable, scalable revenue across this category, because if that's where the eyeballs are, that's where the attention is, then, that's something that we should be able to really, build value around.
How are they capturing that revenue, and who is capturing the revenue? You mentioned brands and activations.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that come along?
Well, I think that we're still kind of surprisingly, when you think about all the money that's been built around this content, particularly by the platforms themselves, we're still in the relatively early innings when it comes to, the rights holders and the organizations be able to build a lot of value. I mean, so you have everything from like, kind of straightforward revenue sharing agreements with the platforms. You have packaging and selling media rights to that content, to digital distribution platforms, the way you would package and sell game rights. You have, tracking and attributing earned media value to sponsorship elements that are being carried through. And then you also have like specific campaigns run around that content, where you're actually, building a storyline around that content that's associated with the brand, delivering that to, social media and other platforms, and actually monetizing it that way.
Is there a brand that you say gets it right now, unlocking that value?
I would say all the brands are very focused on, obviously, focus on social media advertising, focus on these activation campaigns. I think the major consumer brands, the major sponsorship brands in sports do appreciate that value. And I think increasingly the rights holders understand that's something that they want, that's inventory that those traditional sponsors of theirs want. So it's really a matter of, coming up with the strategies that meet the revenue opportunities and really, generate the value.
It's nice to see the NFL has finally come a long way in terms of sharing and not fighting that content battle. But one that I noticed has not is the Olympics, and LA 2028 is coming right up. Do you see them changing at all, evolving? They are taking down content faster than I can lose $25 at a blackjack table.
Yes, I think, first of all, you saw some loosening of those rules, even in the last Olympics, when it came to, fighting less against the athletes and their ability to use the content. Yeah. I think, what I could say, making kind of a gross generalization, I think, traditionally you've seen the media rights in Europe be much more holistic and to include kind of short form content typically, whereas in the United States, there's often like retaining rights around that media and being able to monetize that separately. So, if you think about, some of these organizations in Europe, and obviously the IOC is international, but based out of Europe, like they're selling these kind of global packages that kind of cover all forms of content. They're not really, slicing it up in ways where they're really able to build more value. I think the U.S. leagues, I think in part because they've been attuned to the revenue opportunities around this content for longer, that there's something that they're at least, attributing to, not just kind of lumping in with the rest of the rights. Now, that's not speaking about any specific organization, but it's definitely a kind of difference of opinion that we see, or difference of approach between the U.S. and Europe. That said, I think as these, deals come up for renewal and stuff like that, there's much more appreciation that if they're including those rights, then they need to be valued properly. And if they're not valued properly, then they're not going to include them. And so you do see that kind of evolution happening in Europe as well.
I have a question about one specific organization, the Savannah Bananas.
Yes.
How have they changed the short form content game, and would they even exist without it?
It's a very good question. I mean, certainly, if you look at the Savannah Bananas, I don't know how familiar everybody in this room is with them, but they have many more followers on social media than like the New York Yankees or any Major League Baseball
Yankees and Dodgers combined.
Yeah, I mean, it's really exceptional. I mean, the question, like that style of entertainment, goes back to the Harlem Globetrotters, and there's like real historical precedence for that style of entertainment that they've developed. But what they've done is they've connected the style of entertainment with the mode of delivery, and so where are they connecting with the audiences? It's on social channels. But then, they've done an incredible job of selling out these large venues and selling tickets as well. So they're really connecting the in-person experience with the social experience. What I will say is that they're very purposeful in, the kind, like understanding, how the mode of distribution through these channels affects the type of content that's going to really resonate and really bring those pieces together.
Are they a client?
We've worked with them in the past. Yeah.
They are changing sports. Because at the moment how many of those thousands of professional athletes are on your platform at any given moment, was there a time that it really just blew your mind that the biggest names in sports are on your platform in the moment?
I would say
right after.
I would say there's one time it blows my mind. It blows my mind literally every single day, and it's kind of it's like an obsession of mine to go into our back end after it's the Masters. I want to go in and see the golfers on our platform. It's like the NBA playoffs. Like after every game, I'm like, I want to see those guys on, and I do that literally daily. Obviously, it serves absolutely no benefit at this point, for the organization, but it honestly never gets old. I mean, it's great. It's every single kind of event that really moves the needle, the global community around sports is, almost every single event, I should say, not every single event, but almost every single event, like we're there, we're part of it, and we're an engine of the athletes and these organizations being able to tell the stories around those events.
But I believe it was 7 of the top 10 finishers in the Masters that were on your platform immediately after?
I think within whatever it was, like a couple hours. Yeah.
7 of the top 10 finishers at the Masters. That is wild. Hard to believe. Okay, so you recently made a deal with BYU and the top pick in the draft, AJ Dibansa. Would it have been BYU if it weren't for AJ? And how do you see expanding into the college sports space and NIL in particular?
We're very excited. So we've seen a lot of expansion in college. We also did a global deal with the Big Ten. We've been signing up individual schools. I think, our belief is college athletes deserve the same powerful tools as professional athletes. I think there's been, there's a lot of great technology that's focused on college, but there's often, been a lot of, stuff that's kind of sold specifically to that market, even though the needs are very similar, because people kind of approach it differently. And we think the athletes deserve the same tools, the same quality, the same access. And I think what we've seen is an increasing appreciation on the school side. Certainly the athletes are clamoring for it as well. So that's been really exciting, to do that. And it's really fun to see an athlete's journey from, a college through draft, through professional, and see our platform really enable them to tell that story for that entire.
From your platform to the individual platforms, do you see one social media platform that is growing in particular, perhaps one that's overlooked today?
I mean, there are only so many players in the space. I think I don't think it's it would probably surprise anybody to know that Instagram is the biggest biggest like plurality of content destination for.
Bigger than TikTok.
It is.
Oh no, I would have thought TikTok.
Well, what's interesting is that I think part of that's the nature of TikTok. It's almost to the point that we were talking about earlier. Like you look at Savannah Bananas TikTok versus traditional sports team. There's almost like a there are certain athletes that have done a great job of building out individual channels on TikTok, but it's not as universal as kind of the Instagram approach. That said, the TikTok growth has been tremendous. YouTube as well, and YouTube Shorts are also a growing category. And all of these things are really important. And if you look at an individual athlete, you'll see different things. But overall, and X still remains relevant on our platform as well. Overall, Instagram is the biggest destination.
We're all required to ask about AI because, quite frankly, it's the driving force on the planet. You acquired Miro AI recently. How has that helped the company, and what is the role of AI in the evolution of short-form sports content?
So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer that question. I mean, AI for us means everything from like how we build our tech, how we market our tech. I mean, obviously it's affecting every sort of step along the way. In terms of AI itself being integrated into our platform, I mean, the Miro AI thing that you mentioned was really looking for kind of best-in-class solution that could really help sort of organize, sort, tag, and track the content flowing through our platform. And that's really what that was about. That said, one of the things that's really interesting for us right now is thinking a lot about the tremendous kind of proprietary data visibility that we have, and how can we use AI to really extract the kinds of nuanced learnings from that data that you might traditionally need to depend upon an analyst for, and only be able to do it kind of at a relatively low scale. So I mean, it really is something that's it's almost like it's becoming like the internet. It's like, what impact does the internet have on your business? Well,
it's everything.
There's no business without the internet. I mean, and certainly the way we operate, it's really affecting every aspect of it.
Are we nearing a point where AI will post, where the social media manager and the athlete doesn't need to exist as a middleman, that AI will be the social media manager? It's
a good question. I think in this world that we talk about, like a lot of, everybody talks about the importance of like taste and curation and things like that. I think AI can help enable that. But I think if you completely lose the editorial voice, you really lose, some of the authenticity as well. I think that, So I mean, I don't know. I think of it as empowering.
And nobody wants an automated message on X or Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah, and you can start to see that if anybody's on LinkedIn, you can tell, when it's a link.
I hate it. Yeah. I never reply to anything that feels like AI. Do you?
No, I mean, you get these messages. I noticed you just, randomly, like these kind of, you tune it out like the way you tuned out the deer, blank. You know what I mean? You start to.
That's our advice. Don't ever use AI for an automated message. All right, I want to close with some news you can use. To the founders out there, the prospective founders out there, what's the best piece of business advice you ever learned on this job, or someone ever imparted on you that others can use?
I mean, it's a kind of truism, but the people around you are what matters most. Like, you're going to get good luck, you're going to get bad luck, you're going to get opportunities, you're going to get, surprises, and having the right team that you can really rely upon, emotionally, intellectually, their hard work and dedication is just always the most important thing. So make sure you surround yourself with the right people.
It's nice to hear in the age of AI that people are, in the end, what really matter.
It's really true.
Daniel Kirschner is the co-founder and CEO of Greenfly. Been a great pleasure talking with you, sir.
Absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you so much. A lot of fun.